Hey y'all, welcome back to the Bible and Beyond podcast. I am your host, Louise St. Cyr. Welcome if you're new. And I do want to say it's been almost a couple of weeks now, but as I mentioned in my prior video, I did move states. So it was a rough transition. It wasn't quite the smoothest or the smooth as I'd like. Well, it wasn't the smoothest, as I would have wanted it to be. And there are several reasons why that happened, which I'll get into on a personal level on my main social media channel. Something I keep separate from this. But anyway, there's been a lot that's been going on with my life. What I do here on this podcast is more like the smoother side of the fence, okay? But anyway, let's get into today's topic. It is assumptions, and the very word itself has the first three letters ASS. Because people oftentimes, if we decode these words, it essentially tells us the meaning and the underlying and in-depth root and meaning of the word itself. So ASS, and people who assume things oftentimes make what? An ass out of themselves. Sadly, that is the truth. But here there are quite a few dangers to assumptions. One, in which it's often false gossip that can and sometimes ruin someone's life. Okay? Things are being passed about, that's being said about someone, that are absolutely untrue. It is not the truth at all. It is an act of defamation, as I like to call it, character assassination, defamation of character. There are several ways, or defamatory statements that are made about someone. So it is, one moment. All right, guys, sorry for the loud noise in the background, but yeah, so assumptions are often false gossip, and it's defamatory. It is oftentimes to destroy someone's reputation and or character. It is an evil act to partake in and or to even initiate. If you are the initiator, the person who started the whole smear campaign, so to speak, the gossip, the lies, to destroy someone's good name. And sometimes it's simply out of number two, comes from a place of jealousy, envy, bias, prejudice, and or hatred. Could be a combination thereof, of few or all of those things. And it is very damaging. There are dangerous lies that are told on individuals just to keep a person from being seen in the right light. It often misconstrues the true image of a person. It distorts it in other people's eyes and minds. So this is why when you make assumptions or go about gossiping or smear campaigning somebody's name, the various terms for it, it is a dangerously wicked thing to partake in and or to initiate. And God is taking notes as you go about lying on somebody, especially if it's someone who has high rankings in the spiritual. They have spiritual, they're spiritually an important person in the spirit. They have high rankings in the spirit. So, it's a foolish thing to go messing with somebody with the intent to destroy them based upon lies, because you don't know, again, who you're really messing with, and then you've done, as they like to say, you done messed around and find out all the wrong way, the hard way, and you get severely punished for going around telling lies essentially on somebody to make them look bad. And the thing that you wanted to happen to them became the very thing that destroyed you instead. So instead, like as it's stated in quite a few scriptures, be careful of what you put out. What you put out, you'll get back. What goes around comes around. It's a universal principle. But scripture also says that do not bear false witness against thy neighbor. That is essentially lying. That's essentially slandering somebody's name with untruths. Hold on. Pardon me again, guys. Not a very totally quiet space. But anyway, I'll do my best to get through this without any further interruptions. So it says, do not slander thy neighbors, do not bear false witness against thy neighbor. And I lost my train of thought. But anyway, yeah. So do not bear false witness against thy neighbor. There are great consequences for doing so. Okay, the very pit that, this is the scripture, the pit that you dug for another will be the pit that you yourself will fall into, because it came from a place of wickedness, not a place of truth. Okay, not a place of justice. So your actions aren't even justified. Okay, your words aren't even in lines with the truth. It is in fact a lie altogether. It is an untruth. So you are out here spreading rumors and gossip about somebody, and it is false, and there is great consequences to pay for such matter, because you are essentially putting a good somebody in a bad light, and that is never going to pan out well for you or anyone who partake in it. Even people you would think that would use their discernment, right, to say, no, I heard this rumor about so and so, and I know this person, and I'm going to tell you right now, I know that is not true. I see this woman or this man live their life on a daily basis in the opposite light on which you are describing him or her. So I'm going to use my better judgment. I'm going to use the spirit of discernment, okay, and tell you that is not true. Or you could simply say, I do not like rumors. Okay, I don't partake in gossip. That's who I am. I do not partake in gossip. When the minute somebody starts gossiping, the minute I see a bunch of women sitting around start gossiping, or guys, I mean, I barely hang out with guys, but I head for the hills, because I do not want to partake in he said, she said, hearsay stories about somebody. I like to go, as a sensible, wise person would do, go and get to know the person myself to find out if this is true. Because I can tell you one thing. People can pretend, people can act, but they can't do it forever. There's no way someone can pretend they are one way forever. One or two things will happen. It'll either eventually their true colors will show up and show out, and you'll see that they were just a fake and a fraud and a pretender. Two, they'll live one way in public but another in private. Completely opposite. So there's no way somebody can pretend to be of good character forever without slipping up, without the truth, without who they really are showing its true colors. And I can tell you that for a fact, because despite the lies, despite the slander that was thrown at my name, at my image. This is from personal experience I'm coming from, but I'm trying to put it to you in a third party type of way, a third person type of way. Okay, I'm trying to not put myself personally in these matters, but I can tell you it is from a personal experience, okay, true story. And you cannot fake being something you're not for too long. I'm telling you, there's always going to be a slip up. And if I'm constant, if I'm consistent in my behavior that is in total opposition of the meanness that's being described or said about me, shouldn't that clearly say, your common sense should click in and say, there is no way this can be true? Because I see this woman or this man live their lives, go about their day-to-day business, and they are the sweetest sweetheart I've ever met, or the most nicest person I've ever come across, so loving and caring, blah, 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 great energy, good vibes type of thing. So there's no way this can be true. But it seems like a lot of folks don't have common sense these days, much more discernment and wisdom to be able to tell when what they've heard, the gossip or rumor they've heard about somebody is coming from a place of falsehood. They instead jump on the bandwagon and then become what? Accessible. What do you call it? Accessory to the crime. They become just as guilty as the person who started it. They aid and abet and become enablers of the false matters, talks that are going about the place about such a person, and wind up putting a good person in a bad light. And not, you know what that eventually does, it, and this could very well be the intent of the initiator of this whole slander, this whole smear campaign, was to block, delay, and or rob someone of their blessings and or opportunities that they foresaw, that they saw coming. Maybe they're a witch, maybe they're a warlock, maybe they're in communication with somebody who took admiration of this individual and said, I really like so and so, and I think she or he would be a great fit for this position, and I really want to work with this person. Can you reach out to her or get her number or his number or whatever, so that I can get a meeting with this person? And that person who knows who you're referring to and is jealous and took also note that, okay, this person, to them you're some competition that you're not even in with them, and get jealous and feel envious, like you are a threat to their own existence, as though there isn't enough to go around for everybody. You know what I mean? The greed within some people causes them to think that way, that, if someone else gets an opportunity as them or higher than them or whatever, it's going to wipe them out of their space and or position, and they won't have enough for themselves, or, their lives will be made turned to shambles or whatever. That is the sick, twisted mindset of certain individuals. That's how they think, sadly. That, another person being blessed is going to take from them. But in actuality, there's more than enough to go around for everyone. Okay? But greed, as I stated, jealousy, envy gets in the way of people's righteous thinking. It gets them into that devil mode, of devil mindset, confirmation. Spirit agrees. So yeah, it's very important that you're mindful, okay, of what you are aiding and abetting, what you partake in. Be wise, okay? There's a scripture that said, be wise as doves, I think. Be wise as serpents, clever as doves, something of the other. But be wise, not foolish, people. Use your discernment to gather whether what is being told to you about somebody is true or not before you go join in. In fact, the more wise thing to do is to go get to know the person yourself. Go get it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Hey, I heard this and that about you. Is this true? Don't just automatically assume it's true, unless you just, you were already jealous or envious or hateful towards that person to begin with. is why I think some people would just automatically believe something to be true, or just because you're close friends with somebody, or they're supposed to be of credible character, that there's no way they would be lying. But people do you'd be surprised the ills and the wickedness people do when they are jealous and envious and hateful. The lies that they'll tell on somebody else just to slander that person's name and to keep God's goodness from entering their life. Delay it. They can't keep it, they can't stop it, but they can cause so much trouble and so much delay. So yeah, it can cause delays and disruption, and cause so much struggle and hardship, unnecessary struggle and hardship in someone's life. It could cause them to lose relationships. Maybe there's a love interest. Someone is interested in this person. You went and told lies. And you done messed up a divinely orchestrated, relationship, partnership between two people, because you were jealous and envious and you want that other person, and or you just hated that other person, don't want him or her to be happy or have anything good. You'd be surprised, there are people out here who don't want you to have love or happiness, simply because they're jealous of you, or perhaps because of your calling, your purpose, higher forces in dark places and in high places, meaning seats of position and power, would slander you just to keep two people from coming together, that was ordained to come together. And they do have their oracles, so to speak, their crystal balls that they look into people's lives, who are here to make a difference, to change the world. And because they don't want the world to change, because they want things to remain same, in the same destructive, dark pattern it's been in. This is why they conglomerate together, like the little parasites they are, and attack innocent people to destroy their lives, to hold them back and hold them down, and to keep two power couple from coming together. Truly power couple in God's name. That's the type of power couple I'm talking about. People that can change the world for the better. So be careful of how you go about slandering somebody's name, spreading rumors and lies and gossip, not knowing what their ranking is in the spirit. You don't know what special hands God has upon that person or person's lives. So be very careful. If you're going to open your mouth, make sure it's of the truth and not of a lie. So let's get into scripture. And this one is scripture heavy, because the Bible goes in real hard on gossiping and slandering, being spreading falsehood on somebody's name. It really gives you several different scriptures that mentions that. The first is Proverbs 11:13. A gossip betrays a confidence. But trustworthy person keeps a secret. I'm gonna blot out the second half of that and focus only on the first half of that. A gossip betrays a confidence. Now, I like to dissect scripture and come in on it, on a different angle. I like to perceive it from a different angle than just the surface layer meaning. Now let's go a little deeper on that first part of Proverbs 11:13. A gossip betrays a confidence. You can betray the confidence. Like I said, two people, one is interested in the other, knows about the other, and is interested in a person. The other is unaware of this interest in that person. And here's this middleman that comes in, who knows this person, who's interested in this person over here, who's unaware of you, also the third party. The third party knows of this person, right? That he's being interested in. And then goes and tell this person who has interest in that person, the other person, that, oh, you don't want to get with her or him because blah, 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 blah. bunch of lies, gossiping, because this is what they do. Da, 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 da. That's not a good person. That's she or he is evil. They do this or they do that, or they have a STD. They even go as far as that and make a dangerous, or they're fraudulent. They do this and that crime, and some of them even go out of their way. This third party person in the middle between these, getting in the middle between these people, even go out of their way to orchestrate situations to make it seem like this person is actually the lies that they're describing them to be. Okay, this is why I said be careful of what you say about somebody in falsehood, because the very lies that you tell will be the truth that destroys you. Okay, when the lies get found out to be just that. In other words, so be mindful, be careful, be okay. Be a godly somebody, not a hateful, wicked somebody, okay? But this is what happens. So a gossip betrays confidence. So this person who's now gossiping between the two from coming together, will say to the person who has the interest all those lies. Now they have betrayed the confidence that this person had in this interest of theirs. That confidence that that's a good woman. That is somebody who's just special in my eyes. That's somebody who's of caliber characteristics. That's somebody who would make a great mother or a father or whatever it is. Make a great partnership in business and you name it. But because this person in the middle person, the third party in the middle, okay, the middleman decided to lie and gossip on this person, now the person who had the interest lost confidence in this individual, and then that eventually destroys their interest or delay it, up to the point when they find out the truth. Sometimes it's too late because this person now, somebody else took notice of this person that they were interested in it, and then this person now moved on to the other, but it wasn't divinely orchestrated. That is how the enemy creates diversion. That is how the enemy brings about distraction to get two people who were meant to come together to go in the opposite direction, like two arrows going in the opposite, that should have been shooting star upward, are now going in the opposite direction of where they're meant to be. Do you see? Do you see the deception and the diversion that took place to divide and conquer what was meant for good, and instead send them in opposite direction? And guess what? In certain situations, it works out because the enemy that sent in the counterfeit to play the part of the two that were actually to be together. Now they're individually with counterfeits. They're playing that role, acting like they were meant to be with you. And some of them may treat you right, and others will show up their true colors to be who they really are. And then that never lasts. It's a toxic situation. So there are times when even though an assigned party was meant to come in and destroy and divert you, they wind up falling for you and they treat you right. Those are rare circumstances though, but for the most part, it always ends out to be a toxic relationship. It doesn't last. But it kept two who were meant together to do great things apart. And this is the charge. This is the high charge such individual in the middle will bear for their wrong actions, for spreading gossip, lies, and dividing and tearing apart two that were meant to come together as ordained by God. So be careful that you're not stepping on God's toes when you mess with the wrong one, or in some cases people like say the right one, because you get taught a lesson of manners, good manners that you should have had, not meddling in people's affairs out of your diabolical and dysfunctional emotions. Okay, let's move on to second scripture, Psalm 141:3. Set a guard over my mouth, Lord. Keep watch over the door of my lips. Some of you, who do partake, all of you who do partake in gossip and lies and slander, You should be praying to God, asking the Lord to please set a guard over your mouth, okay? And keep the doors of your lips open so it does not speak falsehood and lies, because again, the consequences is great. It is a wise thing to do, because again, either whether you believe in God or not, what you put out, honey, it's a universal principle. So you will not escape it, whether you believe in God or not. This is the universal principle that God put over the universe, okay? It applies whether you believe in him or not. Okay, what you put out is what you get back. What goes around comes around. Okay, so be mindful of what you put out there, whether positive or negative, because you're going to get it back in the same energetic field on which you put it out. Okay, it's going to come back to you. And again, it might not be in the same exact form. It could be even greater form, but it's going to come back, whether good or bad. You're going to have a return on your words, return on your deeds. All right. So next scripture says Ephesians 4:29. Okay, hold on. Let's pull it up. I think I have that one in my phone instead and put it in my notes. Yeah, I did. All right. Ephesians 4:29. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up, never to tear them down. This is as clear as it can get. There, you don't need me to decode this any further than it already has clearly stated. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful to building others up. So in other words, don't use your words to tear people down. If it's not to build people up, you should just keep silent. Okay? All right, stay silent, because there's always a positive, constructive way, even to chastise. Even when you're chastising someone, meaning you're correcting something wrong they said or did, especially a child, there's a positive way in which to communicate that, rather than to be negative and to be defamatory, to be, rude and debasing towards somebody. There's a positive way in which to correct somebody, especially when you're dealing with an impressionable mind such as a child. You should be mindful of how you talk to that child, okay? And as it's long been stated, it's not what you say, honey, it's how you say it, so be very careful of the words that come out of your mouth. Make sure it's building people up, not tearing them down, because you can destroy a good somebody. Okay, this is how some good people turn bad, because of the words that their parents used at them when they were little, putting them down, calling them dumb, stupid, you name it, all type of cursing at them, and all, making them feel bad about, telling them they're good for nothing, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so make sure your words are building people up rather than tearing them down. Because again, what you put out is what you're gonna get. That's the type of life you live, okay? And it's never an excuse or okay to say, well, this is what my parent did. Okay, you're an adult now. You should know better that what your parents did to you didn't feel good when it was done to you. So why would you now do the same thing to your child or your children? Come on. At some point, common sense got to kick in. Even though you may have grown up in the hood, in the ghetto, you don't have to stay there, darling. You're now an adult. You have free will to choose for yourself now, to behave differently than how you were brought up. It is a choice, not a life sentence. All right. In other scriptures, Exodus 23:1 says, do not spread false reports. Do not help a guilty person by being a malicious witness. Meaning, do not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Don't join ranks with a liar who's going around spreading rumors on somebody to destroy that person. And you know they're lying. And you join in and you aided and abetted them. You're just as bad as the one who started it. You're just as guilty. And the punishment will also fall upon your head. So, do not help a guilty person by being a false and or malicious witness. That is the word. Psalm 101:5. Whoever slanders their neighbor is in secret, I will put to silence. And oftentimes I find this to be quite true. Anytime somebody has to say something about another person in secret, behind their backs, in other words, when they're not around, to defend themselves, is oftentimes lying. Because if you're telling the truth, you won't have a problem saying it in front of the person and in front of the other people you're telling this thing to about that other person. Anytime somebody that come whispering to you about Joe or Jessica, okay, and say, oh, don't tell Joe and Jessica I said this, most of the time, if not all of the time, they're lying. Because truth does not need to be hidden. Only lies do. Only when you're telling a lie, you have to go saying, oh, don't tell him or her I said this. Because why? You know you're lying. You know you're lying. But because you want to convince other people of your lies to be true about the person you're lying on, you say, oh, don't say this. Because they'll also give some legality as to why you shouldn't say, oh, because we can, as a company, especially if you're within an organization, they'll say, oh, you can be sued for defamation of character, for slandering, blah, 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 blah. They'll come up with the most legitimate of excuses of why you shouldn't let this word get back to this person. This is how lies are kept alive till it becomes destructive and or deadly in somebody else's life. Because a lot of these lies that are told, most of them are deadly lies. Deadly lies that'll make some person who's not of right mind go do harm to an individual because of what they heard, but didn't get validation or confirmation. Neither did they ever go to the person and ask, or you didn't use their discernment to say, well, I see this person living their life in a complete different light than which you're describing, then there's no way they can be true, blah, 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 blah. But because they heard it and claimed and it came from so-called credible source, they jumped on the bandwagon and believed it, even though it was a lie, and then go out there and commit a heinous crime and harm and or take that person's life. This is why you should not move on assumptions. Get the truth. Get the facts. That's what a wise, discerning person of God would do. Okay? And even if you don't believe in God, that's what a wise, discerning, smart person would do. Before you go slandering, joining in the slander and destroy or ruin somebody's name and or reputation. Okay? Your image. Damaging their image. The way other people view them. And that is essentially what the enemy does when they tell gossip. It is to blur, distort the image of another person so people can think all the wrong things about them. Again, to block opportunities, relationships, blessings, you name it. It's sad, but it's the truth. All right. And then okay, and then it says whoever slanders that's the Psalm 101. So God will put such person to silence. You go around slandering your neighbor's name in secret, knowing you're lying, God will silence you. That means wrath will be upon you eventually. God's going to give you chances to stop. God's going to give you chances to correct the lies and the gossip to stop it. But if you continue willfully, even though you've been warned several times over and over, the Lord will come to at a point, as any person, human being would. God has his human nature in which he relates to us. This is why he came here in the flesh, so he can understand what we go through, what we feel, blah, 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 on that human level. Okay, because he's God. His ways and his thoughts are higher than our own. Okay? So if he didn't come down here in the flesh, he wouldn't know what we went through and how we feel about these things and the diabolical nature and disposition of people. So God will silence you. He does give you a chance because he understands human nature is prone to mistake, right? Is prone to falter, is prone to imperfection, and so he gives you grace. But when enough is enough, that grace stops and his wrath begins. So this is when at the end of the scripture here it says, and God will put you to silence. God will silence you. Proverbs 10:18 says, whoever conceals hatred with lying lips and spreads slander is a fool. You go about creating hatred and animosity in the atmosphere against somebody, against a group of individual, against whatever, whomever, okay, from a place of hatred, you are nothing but a fool. Okay, because the truth will eventually come out. Okay, and again, universal principle is what you put out, you'll get back. What goes around comes around. All right, so do not go out here spreading false matters and slandering somebody, because that essentially that makes you a fool, not a wise person, because only an unwise person who don't understand spiritual matters and spiritual universal principles would even think of doing such a crazy thing. In fact, you're not spiritually well in mind, body, heart, or soul if you actually would even begin to do such a sick thing, tell such lies, knowing the punishment, the consequences can be great and or grave. Okay, because most of the times these things can turn into unlawful matters, like character assassination, as some people say, defamation of character defamation, however you want to put it. You can wind up letting your negative emotions about such an individual from a place of jealousy or hatred or bias or prejudice, whatever it is, cause you to harm and or take that person's life, and you then what? You're behind bars for the rest of your life. Okay, it may cause you to commit matters of crimes and severe injustices, uncivil acts against such an individual, and the law is against all of those. Okay, there is prison time for all of that. And then James 4:11 says, brothers and sisters, do not slander one another. Can't get any simpler than that. Do not. Do I even need to tell you why not? Just don't do it. It's not a good thing. In other words, James 4:11 is saying, do not slander one another. No man, not a man against a woman, nor a woman against a man, nor a man against man, nor a woman against woman. Do not slander one another, for it is not of God. Leviticus 19:16 says, do not go about spreading slander among your people. Okay, it's really simple. Don't do it to a person. Don't do it to a group of individuals. Don't do it against an organization or whatever it is. Just do not go about spreading lies. Don't slander somebody with your mouth. Okay, because again, it is a sin. And sins can eventually become crime. My grandmother used to say something when she was alive, God bless her soul. I was brought up by my grandmother amongst my other siblings. And she used to say, anyone who lies will eventually steal. And if they steal, they'll kill. One sin, in other words, one sin, one crime leads to another. Okay, once you can start lying, you're going to say, oh, it's just a small thing, just a small lie. But no, it becomes a mountainous, one little lie turned into a snowball effect. It just keeps rolling from one tongue, from one mouth to the next, or maybe your own. You just kept telling one lie after another, and it becomes a snowball effect, a mountainous thing at a point, some point in time. And then you got comfortable being a liar. Then if you lie, you will then steal, because one sin leads to another, as my grandmother was really saying. If you lie, you'll steal, and if you steal, you'll kill. Eventually, you get comfortable in doing one thing, you'll be comfortable in doing another. So never massage anything that is immoral and or lacking of integrity. Okay? Because just as any habit is created, so is bad habits. Lying, stealing, you name it. All right. And Exodus 20:16, you shall not. It commands. This is not even a statement. It's not a question. It's a command. You shall not. Shall. It didn't say will. Okay, won't, wouldn't, couldn't, shouldn't. It says shall, meaning it is so. It is an order. That's the difference between the word shall and will and couldn't, wouldn't, shouldn't, and all of that, and won't. Okay, shall is a set in stone thing. It is a command. This is what God said, you shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. It is a crime. It is a sin. And as I stated, the scriptures are insurmountable. Okay, referencing why it is not wise nor a good thing to gossip and slander and go around spreading false, matters about somebody. So it says, Exodus 20:16 again says, you shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. I don't need to go into details. I've done that already. Why you shouldn't. Proverbs 19:9, a false witness will not go unpunished, and whoever pours out lies will perish. By your own lies. You will fall into the very trap or pit or ill intent or malevolent intent you had towards somebody. It will be your own downfall. Okay? In other words. And Proverbs 12:22, the Lord detests lying lips, but he delights in people who are trustworthy. Yes, trusting you to not slander or smear campaign or lie on somebody just because you're jealous of them or whatever. You can trust people who won't do something like that, but you cannot trust somebody who lets their emotions get the better of them, when they get in a state of envy and jealousy and hatred and prejudice and bias or whatever. Lying lips, God detests it. So do I. I can't stand a liar. Anyway, Psalm 108:2. For wicked and deceitful men have opened their mouths against me. They have spoken against me with lying tongues. And then lastly, Deuteronomy 19:18 through 19 instructs that if a witness is found to be lying, they must receive the same punishment they intended for the accused. Didn't I just say that before even reading the scripture, that the lies that you told will become the truth, the very truth that destroys you? That's essentially what that scripture is saying. Okay? What you intended for somebody else, what wickedness you intended for somebody else will fall back on you. It falls in lines the same with what goes around, the universal principle. What goes around comes around. What you put out is what you get back. Essentially. That is the word. And that's a wrap. Guys, that's all she wrote for today's podcast. And thank you so much for watching. Per usual, don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe. Hit the notification bell if you'd like to be notified whenever I post a new video. I should be back on my regular weekly schedule. And mostly on Wednesdays, if not, any other day of the week. And leave a comment if you want to add to this. If you want to challenge anything I say, we can do so respectfully in the comment section below. And until next time, be good to yourselves and each other. Ciao. Adios. Au revoir. Goodbye, my loves.